Do you, Lucian Cross, take this woman? The ornate doors of the cathedral slammed open. Every head turned. The priest's voice died mid-vow. A figure stumbled through the entrance, silhouetted against the afternoon light streaming through stained glass. He wore a crumpled hoodie over dark jeans, completely out of place among the sea of designer suits and evening gowns. His hand clutched the doorframe for support. "Kai!" someone whispered from the front row. Lucian's breath caught. His bride, Anastasia, gripped his arm tighter, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his sleeve. Kai took 3 shaky steps forward. His face was pale, almost translucent under the golden chandeliers. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "I'm sorry," Kai breathed, his voice barely carrying over the shocked silence. "I didn't mean to." His knees buckled. The sound of his body hitting marble echoed through the cathedral like a gunshot. Screams erupted. Guests rose from their seats. Lucian was already moving, his alpha instincts overriding everything else. He shoved past his groomsmen, his bride's protests nothing but white noise. "Call an ambulance," someone shouted. Lucian dropped to his knees beside Kai, turning him over carefully. Kai's head lolled against his arm. Up close, Lucian could see how much weight he'd lost, how his cheekbones jutted sharply beneath skin that looked paper-thin. Kai, look at me." Kai's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glassy. His lips moved, forming words Lucian had to lean down to hear. "You weren't supposed to. Find out this way." "Find out what?" Lucian's hands trembled as he brushed sweat-dampened hair from Kai's forehead. "What are you talking about?" A woman in a burgundy dress pushed through the crowd. "I'm a doctor. Let me through." She knelt beside them, fingers finding Kai's pulse. Her eyes widened almost immediately. She leaned closer, inhaling once near Kai's neck, then pulled back sharply. "He needs a hospital. Now." "What's wrong with him?" Lucian demanded. The doctor glanced between Lucian and Kai, then at the bride still standing frozen at the altar. Her expression shifted from professional concern to something more complicated. Pity, maybe, or recognition. "He's pregnant," she said quietly, "and severely dehydrated." The cathedral exploded into chaos. Anastasia's mother shrieked. Cameras flashed from hidden corners where paparazzi had undoubtedly snuck in. Lucian's father bellowed something about disgrace from his seat in the front pew. But Lucian heard none of it. His hands were still on Kai, supporting his weight, and the word pregnant echoed in his skull like thunder. His alpha senses, which had been deliberately dampened for the ceremony, suddenly roared to life. The scent hit him all at once, Kai's familiar jasmine and rain, now laced with something new. Something his hindbrain recognized instantly. Mine. Ours. Protect, Get away from him. Anastasia appeared at his side, her veil askew, mascara already beginning to run. "You're making a scene. Security, remove this person. Touch him and I'll break your wrist." Lucian's voice came out as a growl that made several nearby Omegas flinch. "Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers. And tell me where you're watching from." The ambulance took too long. Every second felt like an eternity while Kai lay unconscious in his arms. Lucian couldn't think past the immediate need to get him somewhere safe, somewhere quiet, somewhere the hundreds of staring eyes couldn't reach. "Forget the ambulance," he said, standing with Kai cradled against his chest. "My car. Now." His best man, Marcus, appeared with keys already in hand. "North entrance. I'll clear a path." They moved as a unit through the side chapel, avoiding the main crowd. Behind them, Lucian could hear his father shouting, Anastasia sobbing, the priest trying to restore order. None of it mattered. In the car, Kai stirred slightly. His eyes cracked open, focusing on nothing, then slowly found Lucian's face. "Luke." The nickname was barely a whisper. "Don't talk. We're getting you help." "No hospital." Kai's hand found Lucian's jacket, fingers curling weakly in the fabric. "They'll ask questions. Your family will." "I don't give a damn about my family right now." Marcus slid into the driver's seat and started the engine without being told. "Where to?" "My penthouse. Call Dr. Morrison. Tell her it's an emergency and I need her there in 20 minutes. Lucian, if he needs serious medical attention. She's the best private physician in the city. She'll handle it." The car pulled away from the cathedral, just as news vans began arriving. Lucian caught a glimpse of his father on the steps, surrounded by reporters, his face purple with rage. Kai's breathing was shallow against Lucian's chest. His body felt too light, too fragile. How long had he been like this? How long had Lucian been so wrapped up in his own life, his own obligations, that he'd completely missed? How far along? The question came out rougher than intended. Kai's eyes closed. For months. The math clicked into place immediately. 4 months ago. The night Lucien had told him about the arranged marriage. The night Kai had looked at him with eyes full of betrayal and said, "Then I guess we're done." The night Lucien had kissed him one last time, trying to memorize the taste of him before duty pulled them apart. The night everything had gone to hell. "Why didn't you tell me?" Kai laughed, a broken sound that hurt to hear. "You were busy planning your perfect political marriage. I wasn't going to add myself to your list of problems. You were never a problem." Liar. But there was no heat in the word. Just exhaustion. The penthouse was mercifully empty when they arrived. Lucien carried Kai straight to the master bedroom, laying him carefully on sheets that still smelled faintly of the cologne he used to wear when Kai stayed over. How many mornings had they woken up tangled together in this bed? How many promises had Lucien made that he'd failed to keep? Dr. Morrison arrived exactly 18 minutes later, her medical bag in hand, and her expression professionally neutral despite clearly having been interrupted during her own weekend. "Give me room to work," she said, already pulling out equipment. Lucien stepped back but couldn't leave the room. He watched as she checked Kai's vitals, started in 4 for fluids, pressed a stethoscope to his chest, and then lower, to his abdomen. "The baby?" Lucien heard himself ask. Heartbeat is strong, but he's severely malnourished and exhausted. "Has he been working?" Dr. Morrison directed the question at Kai, who had his eyes closed but was clearly conscious. 3 jobs, Kai murmured. "Had to pay rent. Doctor visits. 3 jobs while pregnant?" The doctor's tone sharpened. "That's incredibly dangerous." Didn't have a choice. Lucien's hands clenched into fists. Kai had been working himself to death, literally, while Lucien had been choosing cake flavors and seating arrangements for a wedding he'd never wanted. Dr. Morrison finished her examination and turned to Lucien. "He needs bed rest. Complete bed rest. No stress, proper nutrition, and close monitoring for the next several weeks at minimum. If he'd continued the way he was going, he could have lost the baby. Or worse." The words hit like a physical blow. "He's staying here," Lucien said. "Whatever he needs, I'll provide it." "Lucien." Kai's voice was stronger now, some of the color returning to his cheeks thanks to the 4. "You can't just, you have a wedding to finish. A wife. A life that doesn't include. That wedding is over." Kai stared at him. "What?" "You heard me. I'm not marrying Anastasia. I'm not marrying anyone except." Lucien stopped himself, the words too raw, too honest for this moment. "The only thing that matters is you and the baby. Everything else can burn." Dr. Morrison cleared her throat diplomatically. "I'll give you 2 some privacy. Mr. Cross, I'll send over a nutrition plan and a schedule for prenatal care. I assume you'll want me to handle this discreetly?" "Yes. Send all bills to my private account." She left with a knowing look that said she'd be reading about this in the tabloids within hours. The silence that followed felt enormous. Kai lay against the pillows, looking smaller than Lucien had ever seen him, and Lucien stood at the foot of the bed feeling like his entire world had just realigned on a new axis. "You can't do this," Kai said finally. "Your family. My family can go to hell. The company. I'll handle it." "Lucien." Kai pushed himself up slightly, wincing. "You don't understand. This baby, I never expected anything from you. I was going to raise it alone. You were supposed to live your life and never know, Anne. And I would have spent the rest of my life married to someone I didn't love while you struggled alone with my child." Lucien moved closer, sitting on the edge of the bed. "That's the future you wanted? It's the future you chose when you agreed to that marriage." The accusation hung between them, sharp and true. Lucien had no defense. Everything Kai said was right. He'd chosen duty over love, obligation over happiness. He'd convinced himself it was for the best, that Kai would move on, that they'd both be fine. He'd been spectacularly, catastrophically wrong. "You're right," he said quietly. "I chose wrong. I hurt you. I abandoned you when you needed me most. And I'm sorry isn't going to fix any of that." Kai looked away, jaw tight. "But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving. Whatever happens next, my family's reaction, the media circus, the business fallout, we face it together. If you'll let me. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything." Lucien reached out slowly, giving Kai time to pull away. When he didn't, Lucien's hand settled gently on Kai's stomach. "Both of you." Under his palm, he felt it, a tiny flutter of movement. "The baby. His baby. Their baby." Kai's breath hitched. "That's the first time," he whispered. "The first time it's moved." Lucien's vision blurred. He'd missed so much already. For months of Kai dealing with morning sickness alone, going to doctor appointments alone, making impossible decisions alone. For months he could never get back. But he could be here for the rest. I'm going to fix this, he said. All of it. I promise. Kai's hand covered his, fingers threading together over the small swell of his stomach. You can't fix the past. No, but maybe I can earn the future. Your phone won't stop buzzing. Lucien glanced at the nightstand where his phone had been vibrating nonstop for the past 20 minutes. 43 missed calls. 67 text messages. He turned it face down without looking at any of them. Let it ring. Kai shifted against the pillows, the 4-line trailing from his arm to the stand beside the bed. That's not going to make this go away. Your family can wait. Lucien stood, moving to the window. Outside, 3 news vans had already parked across the street. They've waited this long for me to live my life on their terms. They can wait a few more hours. You walked out of your own wedding. I carried you out of my own wedding. There's a difference. Kai was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. Why did you agree to marry her in the first place? The question Lucien had been dreading. He turned from the window, meeting Kai's eyes across the room. Because my father threatened to destroy you if I didn't. Kai went very still. What? 6 months ago, when he found out about us. He had investigators dig into your background. Your student loans, your mother's medical debt, the apartment lease you co-signed with your brother. Lucien's hands clenched at his sides. He said if I didn't end things and marry Anastasia, he'd make sure you lost everything. Your job, your home, your family's insurance coverage. So you just believed him? He's done it before. To others who got in the way of his plans. Lucien crossed back to the bed, keeping his distance. I thought if I gave him what he wanted, he'd leave you alone. You'd be safe, even if you hated me. You didn't even ask me. Kai's voice was shaking now, not with weakness but with anger. You didn't give me a choice. I know. You decided what I could handle. What I deserved to know. Kai pushed himself more upright, ignoring how the movement made him wince. You made yourself the martyr and me the victim who needed protecting. I was trying to help. You were trying to control the situation. Just like your father does. The comparison landed like a slap. You're so afraid of becoming him that you don't even see when you're doing exactly what he would do. Lucien had no answer to that. The truth of it sat heavy in his chest. Kai's phone, sitting on the opposite nightstand, began to ring. The name on the screen read Ethan, brother. You should answer that, Lucien said. Kai hesitated, then reached for it. Hey! Even from across the room, Lucien could hear the panic in Ethan's voice through the speaker. Are you okay? I just saw the news. They're saying you collapsed at some alpha's wedding and, Kai, please tell me you're not involved with Lucien Cross. Kai's jaw tightened. I'm fine. I'm safe. That's not an answer. Where are you? With him. The silence on the other end stretched for 3 long seconds. The baby. It's his, isn't it? Kai closed his eyes. Yeah. Jesus Christ, Kai. Ethan's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? Because you would have done something stupid like confronted him. Or told Mom. And I was handling it. Handling it? You passed out in front of 300 people. That's not handling it, that's. Ethan took a shaky breath. I'm coming to get you. No. You can stay with me. We'll figure this out together. Ethan, I'm hooked up to N4 right now. I'm not going anywhere. Kai glanced at Lucien. And I need to. There are things we need to talk about. He doesn't deserve a conversation. He deserves a broken jaw. Despite everything, Kai almost smiled. I love you too. I'll call you later, okay? If you're not safe. I'm safe. I promise. After he hung up, the silence felt different. More weighted. He sounds like a good brother, Lucien said. He is. He's been covering my rent for the past 2 months because I couldn't work enough hours. Kai set the phone aside. I told him I picked up a stomach bug. He believed me because I'm apparently very good at lying to the people who care about me. You're not the only one. Kai looked at him, then really looked, and Lucien felt exposed under the scrutiny. What was the plan? After the wedding, were you going to sleep with her? The bluntness of the question caught Lucien off guard. I don't know. You don't know. I hadn't thought that far ahead. I was just trying to get through each day without falling apart. Without calling Kai. Without admitting the whole thing was a mistake. Without what? Without breaking. The admission came out quieter than intended. Every morning I woke up and convinced myself I was doing the right thing. That you'd move on and find someone better. Someone who could give you a normal life. I didn't want normal. I wanted you. The past tense hit like a knife between the ribs. Kai continued, his voice steady despite the tears gathering in his eyes. When I found out I was pregnant, I spent 3 days just sitting in my apartment, trying to decide what to do. Keep it, don't keep it. Tell you, don't tell you. He wiped roughly at his face. I kept thinking about that last night we were together. How you kissed me like you were memorizing me. Like you knew it was goodbye. Lucien remembered. He'd memorized every detail. The taste of Kai's tears, the way his hands had clutched at Lucien's shirt, the sound he'd made when Lucien had whispered "I love you" against his throat. I decided to keep the baby, Kai said. Not because of you. Because I wanted something in my life that was mine. That I chose. He met Lucien's eyes. And I decided not to tell you because you'd already made your choice clear. I was wrong. You were a coward. The words should have stung, but they didn't. They were just true. Would you forgive someone who mistook your pain for love? Comment below. Lucien sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle Kai. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve a chance to try to make this right. But that baby, our baby, deserves better than what we're giving it right now. Which is what, exactly? Two parents who love it, but can't figure out how to be in the same room without bleeding all over each other. Kai was quiet for a long moment. I'm scared, he finally admitted. Of trusting you again. Of letting you close enough to hurt me. Of raising a child with someone who might wake up one day and decide duty matters more than we do. I can't promise I won't make mistakes. Lucien reached out slowly, giving Kai time to pull away. When he didn't, Lucien's hand settled over his on the blanket. But I can promise I won't make the same mistake twice. I won't choose anything over you and this baby. Not my family, not the company, not my own fear. Words are easy. Then let me prove it with actions. Before Kai could respond, the penthouse door buzzed. Then someone began pounding on it. Lucien Theodore Cross. Open this door immediately. Lucien's father. Of course. Stay here, Lucien said, standing. I'm hooked to N4. I'm not going anywhere. But Kai's hand caught his wrist. Don't let him in. I won't. Lucien crossed to the door, checking the security screen. His father stood in the hallway, face red, still wearing his wedding tuxedo. Behind him stood two of his usual security detail and Anastasia, mascara streaked down her cheeks. He opened the door but didn't move aside. This isn't a good time. Not a good time? His father's voice boomed loud enough to echo down the hallway. You humiliated this family in front of half the city's elite, and you think you can dismiss me? I'm not dismissing you. I'm telling you to leave. That Omega in there, his father tried to push past, but Lucien blocked him with his body. He's poison. He's been using you, and now he's trapped you with some pregnancy claim. Choose your next words very carefully. Something in Lucien's tone must have registered, because his father actually took a step back. But only one. You don't threaten me, boy. I'm still CEO of Cross Industries. I can. You can what? Destroy my life? You've been holding that over my head for 32 years. Lucien's voice came out cold, controlled. I'm done being afraid of you. Anastasia spoke up for the first time, her voice small. Lucien, please. Can we just talk about this? Maybe we can still fix things. The guests are confused, but if we just explain. There's nothing to explain. The wedding is off. Because of him? She gestured vaguely toward the apartment. Because of some Omega who shows up pregnant and convenient? Watch yourself. No, you watch yourself. His father's finger jabbed toward Lucien's chest. You're throwing away everything. Your position, your future, this family's reputation, for what? A child that might not even be yours. The alpha growl that rumbled out of Lucien's chest was involuntary. Primal. It echoed down the hallway and made both security guards tense. That's my child. My Omega. And if you ever question either of those facts again, CEO or not, father or not, I will make you regret it. His father's eyes widened just slightly. In 32 years, Lucien had never challenged him directly. Had never let his alpha nature rise against the man who'd spent a lifetime trying to suppress it. You're making a mistake, his father said, but the certainty had leaked from his voice. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. The board will never accept this. They'll vote you out of succession. Then I'll start my own company. With what capital? I'll freeze your trust fund. Cut you off completely. Lucien smiled, and it wasn't kind. You really think I haven't been preparing for this? I've had my own accounts for 5 years. Investments you know nothing about. I don't need your money, and I never needed your approval. Anastasia was crying openly now. I loved you. No, you didn't. You loved the idea of being married to Cross money and power. We both know this was a business arrangement. She flinched but didn't deny it. I'm sorry you got caught in the middle of this, Lucien continued, gentler now. You deserve someone who actually wants to marry you. That person was never going to be me. His father opened his mouth to argue, but Marcus appeared from the elevator, slightly out of breath. Lucien, the press is gathering downstairs. Building security is trying to keep them out, but handle it. No one gets up here without my explicit approval. Marcus nodded and pulled out his phone, already making calls. This isn't over, Lucien's father said. You'll come crawling back when reality sets in. When that Omega realizes what he's cost you. Get out. Lucien. Get out. The alpha command in the words was undeniable. His father's jaw worked, fury and something else, maybe hurt, maybe just wounded pride, flashing across his face. Then he turned and stalked toward the elevator, security scrambling to keep up. Anastasia lingered a moment longer. I hope he's worth it, she said quietly. I really do. Then she was gone too, and Lucien was left standing in the doorway, adrenaline crashing through his system. When he returned to the bedroom, Kai was sitting up fully now, the four-stand pulled close. His face was pale again, but his eyes were bright. I heard most of that. I'm sorry you had to. Don't be. Kai's hand moved to his stomach, a gesture Lucien was starting to recognize as protective. Your father called me poison. He's wrong. He's going to make our lives hell. Let him try. Lucien sat back down on the bed's edge. I meant what I said out there. About choosing you. About proving it. Kai studied him for a long moment. You just threw away your entire life. No, I just started living it. The words hung between them, fragile and true. Outside, sirens wailed as more press arrived. Lucien's phone continued buzzing with ignored calls. Somewhere in the city, his father was probably already calling emergency board meetings. But in this room, with Kai's hand slowly reaching for his, none of that mattered. I'm still angry at you, Kai said. I know. And scared. Me too. But I'm willing to try. For the baby. Kai's fingers threaded through Lucien's. And maybe for us. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even close to fixing everything broken between them. But it was a start. You need to eat something. Kai looked up from where he'd been staring at his phone, scrolling through headlines about the wedding disaster. I'm not hungry. The baby needs food even if you don't. Lucien set a tray on the bedside table, soup, crackers, ginger tea. Dr. Morrison said small meals every few hours. Since when do you take orders from doctors? Since the alternative is watching you fade away. Lucien sat in the chair he'd pulled beside the bed 3 hours ago. He hadn't left except to answer the door for food deliveries. Please, Kai. The gentleness in his voice did what the command couldn't. Kai reached for the soup, taking a reluctant sip. It was good, homemade chicken broth, not the canned kind. His stomach, which had been in knots for months, actually accepted it. Where did this come from? I made it. Kai nearly dropped the spoon. You cook now. I learned. After you left. Lucien's fingers drummed against his knee, restless. Turns out I had a lot of empty time to fill. Something about the admission cracked through Kai's defenses. The image of Lucien alone in this massive penthouse, teaching himself to cook because it reminded him of the nights they used to share meals together, felt too intimate. Too real. It's good, Kai said quietly. Don't sound so surprised. They fell into silence while Kai ate. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the room in shades of amber and gold. The 4-bag was nearly empty now. Dr. Morrison had said she'd return in the evening to check on him and possibly remove it if his levels improved. Can I ask you something? Lucien's voice was careful. When did you know? About the baby. Kai set down the spoon. About 6 weeks after we ended things. I kept getting sick in the mornings, and I thought it was just stress. Then I missed my heat cycle and, he shrugged. I took 3 tests before I believed it. What was your first thought? Terror. The honesty came easier than expected. Complete, absolute terror. I was barely making rent. My career was going nowhere. And the father was about to marry someone else. Kai's hand moved to his stomach. But then I went to the first ultrasound, and they showed me this tiny blob on the screen. And the doctor said there's the heartbeat. And his voice broke. Lucien's hand found his shoulder, steadying. I knew I'd do anything to protect them, Kai finished. Even if it meant doing it alone. You don't have to do it alone anymore. Don't make promises you can't keep. I'm not. Lucien's thumb traced small circles on Kai's shoulder. I know I've given you every reason not to trust me, but I'm asking you to try anyway. Kai wanted to. God, he wanted to believe that Lucien meant it this time. That he wouldn't wake up one morning and decide the pressure was too much, the scandal too damaging, the sacrifice too great. But trust wasn't something you could will into existence. Tell me about the past 4 months, Lucien said. I want to know everything. Why? Because I missed it. Because I should have been there. Because, Lucien's jaw tightened. Because I need to understand what I put you through. Kai considered refusing. But something about the raw need in Lucien's voice made him relent. The first 2 months were the worst. Morning sickness hit me like a truck. I couldn't keep anything down except crackers and ginger ale. He laughed, but it sounded bitter. I lost 12 pounds. The doctor was worried, but I couldn't afford the anti-nausea medication they prescribed. Lucien's expression darkened, but he didn't interrupt. I was working at the marketing firm during the day, bartending 3 nights a week, and doing freelance graphic design whenever I could. Ethan kept asking why I looked so tired. I kept lying. Kai picked at the blanket. Around week 10, I started showing. Not much, but enough that I had to buy bigger shirts. That's when I realized I couldn't hide it forever. When were you going to tell people? I wasn't. I was going to move. Find a job in another city where no one knew me or my history with you. Start over. The words sat heavy between them. Lucien's hand had stilled on Kai's shoulder. You were going to disappear. It seemed like the kindest option. For everyone. For me, you mean? Yes. Kai met his eyes. You were building a life. A marriage, a future. I didn't want to be the Omega who trapped the Alpha with an inconvenient pregnancy. The media would have eaten me alive. They're doing that anyway now. At least now it's on my terms. Kai gestured vaguely toward the window where camera flashes still occasionally lit up the street below. I chose to show up today. I chose to let you know. Why did you come to the wedding? Kai was quiet for a long moment. Because I couldn't stand the thought of you marrying her without knowing. It felt like lying. And I was so tired of lying. Have you ever loved someone enough to ruin everything? Share your story in the comments. The 4 machine beeped, signaling the bag was empty. Lucien stood to turn it off, his movements careful and practiced like he'd been watching the nurses do it for years. I can call Dr. Morrison to come remove this, he said. Not yet. Kai caught his hand. Stay. Lucien sat back down, their fingers still tangled together. His thumb brushed over Kai's knuckles, tracing the familiar shape of them. I used to do this, Lucien said softly. When you'd fall asleep first. I'd just hold your hand and memorize how it felt. That's pathetic. I know, but he smiled slightly. I have about 100 pathetic stories from the past 6 months. Want to hear them? Absolutely not. Too bad. Lucien shifted closer. I kept one of your shirts. The gray one you always wore on lazy Sundays. It stopped smelling like you after a few weeks, but I couldn't bring myself to wash it because that felt too final. Kai's chest tightened. Lucien, I drove past your apartment 17 times. Never stopped, never went up. Just sat in my car like a stalker and wondered if you were okay. Lucien's voice dropped lower. I almost called off the wedding 4 times. Wrote the speech, had Marcus on standby to deal with the fallout. But every time I'd think about my father's threat, about what he'd do to you if I didn't comply, and I'd lose my nerve. You should have trusted me to fight my own battles. I know that now. Kai studied their joined hands. Lucien's were larger, calloused in new places from whatever stress habits he'd developed. But they still fit together the same way they always had. The baby moved earlier, Kai said. When you touched my stomach. I felt it. That's the first time it's happened. I was starting to think, he stopped himself. Think what? Okay, but after this is done, after I've said my piece, we face everything else together. Deal. Kai studied him for a long moment. Deal. 2 hours later, Lucien stood in front of a wall of cameras and reporters, microphones thrust forward like weapons. Marcus stood to his left, PR team flanking the makeshift podium they'd set up in the conference room of Cross Industries headquarters. His father sat in the back row, arms crossed, expression thunderous. Lucien didn't read from the prepared statement. He looked directly into the cameras and spoke from the gut. Yesterday, I walked away from my wedding. I want to address why, and I want to be completely transparent about what happened. He paused, steadying himself. 6 months ago, I was in a relationship with someone I loved deeply. When my family arranged my marriage to Anastasia Volkov, I was told that ending my previous relationship was non-negotiable. I was also told that if I didn't comply, the person I cared about would face serious consequences. Reporters began shouting questions. Lucien raised a hand. Let me finish. I made the choice to protect someone I loved by sacrificing my own happiness. I thought I was doing the right thing. I was wrong. His voice steadied. The person I walked away from is Kai Chun. And yesterday, I discovered he's been carrying my child for the past 4 months. Alone, while working 3 jobs to survive. Because I made him believe he had no other choice. The room erupted. Cameras flashed like lightning. His father stood abruptly, but Lucien kept talking. I'm not here to ask for sympathy or forgiveness. I'm here to make one thing absolutely clear. Kai did nothing wrong. He didn't seduce me. He didn't trap me. He didn't show up at my wedding to cause a scene. He showed up because he was exhausted, malnourished, and had nowhere else to turn. Lucien's voice hardened. Any media outlet that continues to paint him as anything other than a victim of my cowardice will face legal action. Mr. Cross, a reporter in the front row. Are you saying your father threatened Kai Chen? I'm saying my family made it clear there would be consequences if I didn't comply with their wishes. I chose to believe those threats rather than trust the person I loved to stand beside me through whatever came next. What about Anastasia Volkov? Did she know about your previous relationship? Our engagement was a business arrangement. She knew I wasn't in love with her. What she didn't know was that I was in love with someone else. Lucien glanced briefly at where his father was now storming toward the exit. I take full responsibility for the pain I caused her and her family. Are you stepping down from Cross Industries? No. I'm staying on as COO and working toward CEO. But I'm doing it on my terms, not my father's. Lucien straightened. I'm also establishing a foundation to support Omegas who face discrimination in the workplace and in their personal lives. It'll be funded through my personal accounts and run independently of Cross Industries. The questions came faster now, overlapping and aggressive. Marcus stepped forward, signaling the end of the conference. But Lucien had one more thing to say. To Kai, if you're watching this, I meant every promise I made to you. I'm not running. And to everyone else, I'm asking for privacy while we navigate this new reality. Thank you. He stepped away from the podium, ignoring the shouted questions that followed him out of the room. Marcus caught up with him in the hallway. That was either brilliant or career suicide. We'll know which in about 6 hours. I don't care which it is. Lucien pulled out his phone, checking for messages from Kai. Nothing yet. Get me home. When Lucien returned to the penthouse, he found Kai in the living room, laptop open, watching the press conference coverage. His expression was unreadable. You watched. Every second. Kai closed the laptop. You just declared war on your entire family. They declared it first. I'm just finishing it. Kai stood slowly, crossing the room until they were toe-to-toe. You really meant it. All of it. Every word. The foundation. That's going to cost you millions. Worth it. Kai's eyes searched his face. You're insane. Probably. Lucien's hand found Kai's waist, steadying him. But I'm insane about you, so it balances out. That was the worst line you've ever delivered. I'll work on my material. For the first time in what felt like years, Kai smiled. Actually smiled, not the bitter or sad versions he'd been offering. It transformed his face, made him look younger, lighter. Your father looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. Good. Maybe it'll teach him that threats don't work on everyone. Kai's phone buzzed on the coffee table. He glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted. It's Ethan. He says half the internet is defending you, and the other half wants you crucified. Sounds about right. He also says, Kai's breath caught. He says he's proud of me for standing up for myself. Even if I did it in the most dramatic way possible. Lucien pulled him closer, careful of his still fragile state. Your brother sounds smart. He is. He's also on his way over here to make sure you're treating me right. With a baseball bat, apparently. I'd expect nothing less. They stood like that for a while, Kai leaning into Lucien's warmth, both of them processing the fallout of the past 2 days. Outside, the press vans were multiplying again, but inside this penthouse, something had shifted. The foundation they'd started building last night felt more solid now. Still fragile, still uncertain, but real. Have you ever had to choose between love and duty? Tell us where you're watching from. 3 months passed in a blur of doctor's appointments, media scrutiny, and learning how to be partners again. Kai moved into the guest room as planned, but most nights he ended up in Lucien's bed anyway, drawn by warmth and old habits that refused to die. Lucien's father made good on his threats, cutting him from the will, attempting to remove him from the company board, spreading rumors about Kai's background. But the board voted to keep Lucien, impressed by his handling of the crisis and the positive press from the foundation announcement. Anastasia's family sued for emotional damages. Lucien settled quietly and wished her well. And through it all, Kai's stomach grew, the baby becoming more real with each passing week. Now, at 7 months pregnant, Kai stood in the penthouse nursery, directing where Lucien should hang the mobile they'd picked out together. The room was painted soft gray with white trim, gender-neutral and calming. A little to the left. Lucien adjusted it. Here. Your other left. I only have one left, Kai. Then you're not trying hard enough. But Kai was smiling, that same real smile that had become more frequent over the past months. Lucien climbed down from the ladder, circling around to wrap his arms carefully around Kai from behind, hands settling on the pronounced curve of his stomach. You're glowing. I'm sweating. There's a difference. Glowing, Lucien insisted, pressing a kiss to Kai's temple. The baby kicked against his palm, strong and insistent. They did that now whenever they heard Lucien's voice, like they recognized him already. They're going to be a handful, Kai said. They're going to be perfect. You're biased. Completely. Kai turned in his arms, careful of his center of gravity. Thank you. For what? For proving you meant it. For staying. For. Kai's hand covered Lucien's on his stomach. For all of it. Lucien kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Different from the desperate kisses of months ago. This was something steadier. Something built to last. They broke apart at the sound of the doorbell. Kai groaned. If that's another reporter. It's not. I'm expecting someone. Who? Lucien went to answer the door, returning moments later with a woman Kai didn't recognize. She was older, professional, carrying a briefcase. Kai, this is Margaret Torres. She's a family attorney. Kai's stomach dropped. What? Before you panic, Lucien cut in quickly. She's here to help us. I want to set up a trust for the baby. Education, medical expenses, everything they'll need. But I also want to make sure you have legal protection if... He stopped, jaw tight. If something happens to me, or if we don't work out, I want it in writing that you and the baby are taken care of, no matter what. Kai stared at him. You're setting up a trust that protects me from you? And from my family? And from anyone else who might try to use the baby as leverage? Lucien's expression was serious. I told you I'd prove this was real. This is part of that. Margaret cleared her throat diplomatically. If you'd like some time to discuss this privately. No. Kai's voice was thick. No, thank you. Let's do it. They spent the next hour going over documents, signing papers, building legal walls around their small family. By the end, Kai felt simultaneously protected and overwhelmed. After Margaret left, Kai sank onto the nursery floor, back against the wall. Lucien joined him, their shoulders touching. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Most people would just say they'll take care of us. You actually proved it. Words are cheap. I learned that the hard way. Lucien's hand found Kai's. I'm done with cheap promises. Kai leaned his head on Lucien's shoulder, exhaustion and gratitude mixing in his chest. 3 months ago, he'd been alone and terrified. Now he had this, a room waiting for their baby, a partner who proved his commitment in tangible ways, and a future that felt less like a burden and more like a gift. I love you, Kai said quietly. The first time he'd said it since they'd gotten back together. Lucien went very still. Then his arm came around Kai's shoulders, pulling him close. I love you too. Both of you. The baby kicked as if in agreement, and they both laughed. Outside, the sun was setting over the city, painting the nursery in shades of gold. Somewhere, Lucien's father was probably plotting revenge. Somewhere, tabloids were still dissecting their story. Somewhere, people who didn't know them were judging choices they'd never had to make. But in this room, none of that mattered. They had each other. They had their baby. And they had a future they'd built together, brick by brick, promise by promise. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely real. And it was theirs.